How many professional magicians nowadays have you seen do close-up magic on a stage? Like, almost all of them, right? Or at least any of them that are notable. But the fact is, it's becoming way more popular. With the advent of Shin Lim and others like him, whether it's Matt Franco or other people like that, and of course, Fool Us and America's Got Talent, we now realize that people are doing close-up magic in a stage setting more and more naturally, and that it's possible to do this and really portray a magical feeling in a way that it's not done in any other way, right? Because now you're being able to reach tons of people with that close-up feeling, but in a live stage setting. So today we're going to be talking about how you can do that as a professional magician, or somebody who's even thinking about being a professional magician. You don't have to be one already, you could just be somebody who is thinking about doing this. Today we're going to talk about my setup, how I do this, and what I think about when I'm actually, planning my routines for this type of situation. Then I'm also going to cover over why you should consider doing this too, and why it's extremely valuable. Alright, let's get into the details. What we're going to be talking about today is this: cables, tripods, gear, all the things that you're going to need to set up a close-up performance and do it in a stage situation where you can allow people to see it on a projected screen, okay? So we're going to talk about that first, and then we're going to move into the how you plan a whole routine for this type of gig, right? And then of course we're going to talk about the benefits like I said. So let's get right into the stuff that you're going to need. So you're going to need cables. The cables include power cords, an extension power cord, camera charger that's extended, of course, very long, and of course long HDMI. Then you're going to need, of course, a tripod, and of course an adjustable arm, and a camera. Okay, so I personally use GoPro, but you could also use whatever camera that you want, something that works well for you. But I'm going to leave all of this stuff linked down below, so if you want any of it, you can go there and buy it yourself as well, and you can use the same stuff that I do and just kind of follow along the way I do it. Okay? Then of course, you're going to need a projector screen, a projector, and a projector stand. All these things, when you have them together, will allow you to do your first show where you project your close-up act onto a screen and have way more people see it. Now, let's get into each of the ones that I use, and then I'll talk to you about where you can get them, of course, and the links below. So, of course, we're going to start with power cable. Well, you obviously have the power cable that comes with the projector. It hooks into the back of it and of course comes out. Same thing with the camera, you have a power cable that comes with the camera. The fact is, the power cable with the camera is not going to be long enough. But the simple fix to the short power cable on the projector is to get an extension cord. And you're going to want to get one that's at least 10 feet long, if not much longer. I recommend getting as long of one as you can, as long as it's not something crazy, Obviously you don't need one that's like, 100 feet long, but 50 feet would be good, I think. I know that sounds extreme still, but the fact is, when you get on stage, or you're setting up a stage situation, the fact is, you never realize how far away the power sources can be at times. Like a good stage, obviously, should have power sources that are close, but a lot of times you'll get places, or you'll be performing in a place that wasn't even meant to actually be a stage, and then you're kind of screwed if you don't have plenty of long cable for the power, okay? Now, why do you need such a long HDMI cable? I'm going to say this right now. You're going to need as long as an HDMI cable as you can, and as long as of a charger for the camera as well as you can get. And the simple reason why is because the camera is not usually going to be close to the projector. Okay? That's just how it is. Your projector is going to be far away from your table. And the reason why is if you wanted to have a spectator come up on one side or another, it can be kind of awkward if the cable is really close. Also, if you're doing stuff here and the projector's just right there, it can be annoying as well if it's that close and you want to move around or do other things, right? Especially if you want to do, let's say, some other type of stage magic during your show and you want to be able to take down the stuff quickly. Well, the fact is, if it's all close like that and you're trying to move around, it can just be really annoying. It's just easier to have it spread out, trust me. From personal experience, that's the case. It may not seem like it, but it is. Now, that being said, what are you going to need besides that? Well, of course, you're going to need the tripod and the adjustable arm, okay? So with me, I have the tripod and then the adjustable arm hooks onto it, and then that holds the camera, okay? And that allows me to adjust the camera. Super useful. This means that I could, if I choose to, have the camera facing down just at the mat, or I can have it at an angle where it takes the mat and me into its view and projects both of us, right? Or I can have one that's in between where it doesn't project my face, but it projects my hand in the mat at a kind of comfortable angle. Either way, it allows me to do what I need for whatever routine that I'm doing. So, then what's the camera that you should use? What camera should you use? Well, I personally use a GoPro. You don't have to use that if you don't want to, but you could also smash the like button and help me out as well, or you could just go ahead and get a GoPro too. I know, it's so random, but the fact is, you smashing the like button helps me out a lot if you haven't done it already, and of course, be sure to subscribe while you're at it for more good information like this if you found it useful. Now, back to the topic. Like I said, of course, GoPro is great. You can use whatever camera you want. If you already have one that's really high quality, maybe you want to do YouTube or you've been doing something like that yourself already, then go ahead and use what you have. But I do recommend it because it works well. The only downside is, like I said, you should have it plugged in all the time. Or I guess I haven't said that yet, but if I haven't said it, you should have your camera plugged in all the time. And that includes if it's not a GoPro. The reason why is you never know what could go wrong with the power source. The fact is sometimes you'll forget that the camera is on, like before the show, and it uses up battery more than you thought, and then it just dies during it. I've had weird things like that happen where I thought there was more charge. It's just better to be safe and always have it plugged in during a live show. Okay, so I use, like I said, a GoPro. You don't have to use that, but that being said, let's talk about the projector. So this is a projector that I personally use. It is a decently spendy one, but it works well, and if you want to get any projector that will actually last you and actually produce results, you're going to have to get one that costs at least a decent amount. Now, you don't need one that's like the most expensive, but this does the job, right? And so that's why I use a specific one. It has nice, like, bright type of, I think it's called lumens, so like it's very, very bright. That's what's important. You want it to be as bright as possible, and so you want to look for one that has the highest lumens. And that's just because, well, a lot of times you're not going to have the lights completely turned off, right? You can dim the lights in a lot of places, but you're never going to have the lights completely off, so you generally need one that projects pretty brightly so that people can see it either way, whether the lights are on or off. Though I would recommend always trying to get the lights turned down a little bit so people can see it better. Alright, so now you have the projector. Of course you want a projector stand that's adjustable. That's important as well. The stand should be adjustable. And then of course a portable projector screen, which you can project onto. So the one I chose specifically because its size allows it to fit in my car and yet still have a very, very large screen. Screen size for me, the one that I use, is about 100 inches across, I think, and like 80 inches tall. It may be a little bit bigger, I don't remember. But basically I got the biggest one that I could get that would fit in my car. Now, that being said, you can get bigger ones if you like, but as far, or at least from my experience, you're not really going to need anything bigger than that, right? So you can definitely give it a shot, but if you do think you want something bigger, of course there are bigger ones out there. I think it's just the perfect size in my opinion. Okay, so now that you have all of that, let's talk about the actual process of setting this up. How hard is it, all right? How hard is it to get the camera to stream through the projector? And the fact is, it's actually not that hard. I'll explain to you kind of how it works, or not even kind of, exactly how it works right now. And I think it pretty much works this way no matter what camera you use. I thought I might have to have some special setting on my camera, but the fact is, if you just turn the camera on, and you plug in the HDMI to the camera, and then into the back of course, the projector, then it should automatically just project what's going on the camera. Now here's the thing. You will have to change a setting in the projector, but it's very simple. If it doesn't work for you right away, what you're going to want to do is go into the settings. And you can do this in two ways. You can use the buttons on top, or oftentimes projectors will come with a little controller like this. It's nice when they do, because then you can do it from a distance if you need to, and you can always have that sitting there next to you if you need to figure something out during the performance if something isn't right, such as if you wanted to turn the brightness up halfway through, or maybe you wanted to, I don't know, there's many settings that you can play with. Change, the field of view or how wide it projects, because you can do that as well with these sometimes. This one I think you have to do it by hand, but I know there are other ones where you can actually adjust the focus on this as well. Okay, so What are you going to do when you get into settings? Well, what happens is you basically go to the menu. On the menu, there's one that says Inputs. You go to that one, and then you just literally click on HDMI Input, and it should automatically display whatever's coming through the HDMI. That's simple. The first time I hooked it up, it didn't work, and that's because I didn't have it on the HDMI setting, and I freaked out thinking, oh, you know, what's going on? Is this terrible? Yeah, basically. So, that being said, that pretty much sums up the setup, okay, and the things that you're going to have to worry about. So let's talk about things that deal with performance and what you have to think about when you're performing this type of show, right? Because this isn't the same as just doing your normal close-up act. It's very similar, and if you do a lot of close-up magic, it will be much more natural to do this than to do, you know, new stage illusions that are like bigger, because a lot of those you have to think more about the audience's view, about standing in a specific way, about how you hold your body, which I think is important even in close-up. Personally, I study that, you know, making myself look as natural as possible. But if you've done a lot of close-up, just going from the close-up mindset to the stage, like standing up mindset, can be pretty hard, and so it's much easier to kind of do this when you're starting out. Plus, the truth is, it's actually way less expensive. And I'll explain why here in a little bit, but first let's finish this conversation we're having now. And that is, here's the thing. When you want to plan your performance, right? When you're going to talk about your, let's say, multi-phased routine that you're performing in this situation, what you need to think about is the fact that you probably don't want to use audio. That's my first thing that I think you need to think about. Don't use audio. Figure out how to do it to music. The reason why is it's going to make it so much easier. Like, it's crazy how much easier it makes it for you in the situation. And the reason why is because most of the time when you're in a big room and you're using a stage, you require mics, okay? And miking is hard, okay? There's so many chords, there's so much to think about, mics don't always work the way you want them to, you're going to have a designated sound guy, and the thing is, oftentimes if you go places, they will have a sound guy, but if you're at a table and you're sitting down, and maybe you want a spectator to come up at some point and stand here and like sign their name on a card or something, then the fact is, you don't want to have to mic them and yourself and all the situation. It's just difficult and annoying, and it doesn't always work right. So it's much easier to time it to music and learn how to communicate with the spectator, you know, without words. Now, that being said, there is another way to do this without mics where you can use words. And this is another idea that I have been thinking about. I haven't really completely done it myself, but I've seen other people do this. And that is to pre-record what you're going to say. All right? Have it all pre-recorded, have it timed out, and then you can have somebody in the back kind of like control it, right? If you need to be, if you're going to have it command a spectator to come up, then you can just have them stop and start, you know, the parts until the spectator responds to it. Whatever you like, okay? But that's actually easier than having to worry about the mics. In my opinion, it's also less expensive. Because most of the time for this situation, you're going to want some type of, you know, like a face mic and other stuff like that. And a lot of the places you go, although they're proficient in mics and everything like that, they won't always have the mic that you want, and they won't always have the setup that works for your system. So, like I said, easier to just avoid it. So, you can have it pre-recorded. You could even have a voiceover where you use someone else's voice. That way, if you feel awkward about your own voice, you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't even have to worry about talking. It takes away some of the stage fright, so it makes it much easier, just something to consider, okay? And either way, if you have it timed to music or to words, the best part is you know exactly how long each set is or each routine is, and so planning a show that's actually going to be exactly 30 minutes or exactly an hour long is so easy to do. It just makes it easier overall. So that's why I say that. Okay, so that's the reason why it makes it easy, but let's talk about expenses and things like that. Now, overall, performing magic on a stage through using this type of system is way cheaper. And the reason why is because, well, most big magic props that you would use as a stage magician are very expensive. And if you buy this, you can usually figure out how to do practically a whole show, but, you know, in this type of setting. Now, That being said, it might be smart to have backup material in case technology goes bad, but the fact is, if you do, amass this type of stuff and then get doubles of everything, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have doubles of the camera and the projector. From my experience, there's practically never any serious technical difficulty with those two things, I mean, unless your camera completely dies on you. That's unlikely, but let's say that did happen. You might want to have an extra backup camera, which if it's GoPros, you can get two that work well for that, very cheap. I mean, very cheap. For $300, you could easily get two GoPros, or I guess it would be like $350, but you could get two GoPros as long as they're not the newest one out, right? And that's going to easily do the job. And you can always have an extra bulb for one of these. So if you get one that's not terribly expensive, same. But the thing is, that is actually cheaper, like I said, than getting these other magic supplies. Because honestly, a lot of my big props, if I actually add up all of them, unless it's rope magic or card manipulation, those two things are like the only things that are cheap. Everything else usually costs at least $100 to a few $100s, and that just gets, crazy, because after you have 4 or 5 tricks, or the materials for all of them, it's just crazy, right? I mean, unless you're just going to do card tricks, but trust me, card tricks don't look as good, and you could do so much more with close-up on this situation. The other thing, that's the other good point about it, is that the diversity and creativity that you can get from doing close-up magic on a mat, whether it's with coins, or whether it's with a spectator, or whether it's with rubber bands, right? The amount of different stuff that you can do is much greater with this type of setup than it is with general stage magic, because as far as stage illusions go, a lot of them are very similar or have been done for a very long time, and so people aren't going to see anything new. If you want something that makes you stand out, this will be easier to create a routine that is unique to you, that makes you stand out. So between the cost, between all those things, I think that this is just much better, easier, and it plays in well with doing close-up magic. If you're somebody who specializes and normally does close-up magic, it doesn't take a lot else to add on, to your normal routine to kind of change it and make it work with this. It's just an easier transition. Anyways, those are the reasonings that I have for why I think this is, a good idea. You don't have to do this, obviously, if you don't want to. I'll talk about stage props and stage things later, and how to actually do stage shows without this method. So the classic stage tricks that work really well for being a traveling magician or somebody who does this type of thing for fairs. But that's going to be a different episode. Remember, if you like this material, the stuff that I just told you about, and you found it useful, be sure to smash that like button. Absolutely destroy it. And of course, subscribe, because you're going to want to see all the new stuff that's coming out. I'm going to do lots more on this topic of being a professional magician, what I use in my shows, how I set them up. Anyways, I hope this was useful. Don't worry, I will be doing more reviews as well. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you guys again soon.